If you've been around this channel at all, you know I love a good FPS game, but sometimes ones come along that they're just kind of dumb. What is up, everybody? Jimmy your Chaos, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to do something a little different, but in the same vein of Call of Duty. Today we're going to go over my picks for the 20 dumbest first-person shooters of all time. These are FPS games that I think deserve a bit of playful mockery for one reason or another, so you let me know which of these you actually played down in the comments. Drop a like, and if you guys want more FPS-related top 10s, top 20s, definitely show some love on this one. We're going to start things off. We're going to settle it, because it's going to be a long one, but at number 20, I'm going to go with 13, the remake. Now, the original 13 is a classic first-person shooter for the GameCube. That's right, the GameCube era that featured, I would say, stylish art style. It had personality, but the remake that came out in 2020 decided to turn it into this bland, realistic FPS game that stripped out all of the original unique features while also adding a ton of additional bugs. Who would have thought? I have no idea who thought it was a good idea to take a game with so much visual style and turn it into yet another realistic first-person shooter, but that's the nonsense we got in 2020, and you know what? I think that's dumb. I can appreciate the fact that developers took the criticism to heart and actually fixed some of the problems, but this is an idea that should have been shot down before they ever wrote a single line of code. At number 19, wouldn't be a dumbest FPS list if you didn't have Rambo the video game. Now, I'm glad this developer has a bit of a comeback story with excellent movie tie-in games like Terminator Resistance and RoboCop Rogue City, but, woo! Their first movie game was Rambo the video game, which is not only one of my least favorite games of all time, I have played it, but it's also just conceptually terrible as an idea. Rambo is an awesome character. There's so many great ways to make an awesome video game with him as the start, but instead, they made a rail shooter that was horribly short, extremely shallow, and basically had none of the personality of the character that Rambo did in the movies. Again, I'm glad the studio found their footing in recent years, but I'm still not sure if I forgive them for this. Who came up with the idea? Who greenlit this? And then who play-tested it and said, yeah, this needs to go to market? You got the video game rights to Rambo, and you decide to make him into an arcade rail shooter. Nah. At number 18, Battleship. Doesn't get a whole lot dumber than this. Well, it does. There's 17 more. Battleship is a first-person shooter based on the live-action movie, you guessed it, Battleship, which was also based off, you guessed it, the board game Battleship. Not only do we get a horrible action movie based on the Battleship board game, then we got a horrible first-person shooter based on the movie that was based on the board game. I don't think I need to say anything else. Short and sweet. Plenty dumb on its own. At number 17, GoldenEye, hold on, 007, the 2010 version. Now, if you know me, you know the original GoldenEye for the Nintendo 64 is one of my favorite games of all time, so maybe that's why I have such a negative opinion of the 2010 version. I just can't wrap my head around it. Help me out. The 2010 GoldenEye was a remake of the classic GoldenEye, but with Daniel Craig as James Bond. Setting was changed to be in modern day, meaning all the guns were swapped out for modern ones. There was lots of explosions. The whole thing kind of felt like a Call of Duty clone. Some people like this reimagining of the classic GoldenEye, but not me. Why make a new version of GoldenEye, but change so much of it that made it unique? Why not just make a new James Bond game with Daniel Craig? Yeah, speaking of dumb James Bond games, let's keep going. Let's roll the James Bond franchise. At number 16, GoldenEye Rogue Agent. This is a bizarre game because even though it has GoldenEye in the name, it literally has nothing to do with GoldenEye the movie or the classic game. They were just trying to play off of the popularity of the name. GoldenEye Rogue Agent, released in 2004, and the only reason the word GoldenEye is even in the title is because your character literally has a golden eye. Woo! That's creative, EA. That's a good one. Super clever. The game itself was just a generic modern FPS game set in the James Bond universe, but with none of the charm or character of the 007 movies or games that came before it or after it. It was a lame attempt to cash in on the popularity of the GoldenEye game on the 64, and to me, that is dumb. At number 15... Concord. I'm sorry, fans, but this one was dumb. It's not that Concord was a dumb game on its own, but the way it was developed and the intentions behind it, to me, truly dumb. Concord was meant to be a launching point for Sony's next big universe, but in reality, it was a generic hero shooter that was super overpriced and it took 8 years to develop. It was a massive failure. Such a massive failure that it was removed from sales less than 2 weeks after launch. That may be a record. and Sony was forced to refund everyone who bought it. Maybe it'll come back in the future, but I doubt it. This was one of the biggest financial flops in gaming history, and I honestly think it deserves to be here. But just to retain balance here, and I will also say, make a game for the players, not agenda-driven. Just want to put that out there. At number 14, Overwatch 2? Now look, Overwatch 1 was a great game. Blizzard really had something special. But why does Overwatch 2 exist? Help me out. Overwatch 2 replaced Overwatch 1, and while some things about it were nice, like the switch to a free play model or free to-play model and a bunch of new cool cosmetics, basically everything else about Overwatch 2 is a step down from what came before it, was it not? The new gameplay tweaks were widely criticized for being unnecessary. The Battle Pass system frequently gets heat from the community for being grindy and not worth the time or the investment. And Blizzard canceled the PvE mode that Overwatch 2 was supposed to be a vessel for. So, genuinely, help me understand. Why does Overwatch 2 exist at all? Just revert back to Overwatch 1, and everything will be good, I think. At number 13, Terminator 3 War of the Machines. Notice a lot of movie tie-in games on this list. Making a large-scale multiplayer FPS based on the future war of the Terminator franchise sounds amazing. Heck, that's a game that I would be super interested in playing. Seems like that was originally the idea for Terminator 3 War of the Machines, released for the PC in 2003, and on the surface, it seemed like it was just a reskin of Battlefield 1942, which frankly, I would have been okay with. But the developers made a bunch of really dumb changes to the Battlefield formula. And you have to wonder why the heck they even thought any of them were good ideas. The artificial intelligence was really bad, horrendously bad. The maps were bad. The weapons were unbalanced. The whole thing felt lifeless. I'll say it again. A Battlefield clone set during the future war of the Terminator franchise is honestly a good idea. But if you're going to make that game, why would you change a bunch of things in the Battlefield formula for no reason? Why not just commit to the concept, make something that everybody would be on board with? Terminator 3, huge failure because of the ways it differentiated itself from the Battlefield franchise, and now it's one of the worst reviewed Terminator games of all time, which is honestly kind of impressive because there's a lot of bad ones. At number 12, Redneck Rampage. This is one of those games that kind of developed a cult following over the last couple decades because it was one of those so bad it's good. Conceptually, it belongs on this list because it's called Redneck Rampage, and as you're running around Arkansas, you get your health back by eating moon pies and pork rinds. But don't eat too much food at once, or else your character will just start farting all over the place. I'm serious. The game is actually pretty funny. It's got a goofy charm, I guess, but if we're talking about dumb first-person shooters, it has to be on this list. I want to know who came up with the concept. At number 11, Aliens Colonial Marines. Conceptually, this should have been one of the best games of all time. It was pitched as an action horror FPS where you played as the human soldiers in the alien universe trying to survive and get to the bottom of the xenomorph infestation. However, somewhere in development, we got lost. That concept changed to you're the humans and aliens fighting other humans and aliens, and that's where everything fell apart. When I boot up a game with aliens in the name, I don't want to be playing a worse version of Call of Duty. The xenomorphs are barely in the final version of Colonial Marines, and the actual human-to-human combat is bad. I mean, why did the game come out? Whose idea was it to turn an aliens game into a bad Call of Duty clone? And it was false advertising, because it looked totally different than what we actually got. Now we get into the top 10. They're going to get really dumb, so hang on. 007 Legends. Last one, I swear. Last 007 game. In the early 2010s, it was clear that Activision had to do something to kickstart the James Bond license in the world of gaming. Movie tie-in games weren't really working out. People were tired of every new 007 game just being a Call of Duty ripoff instead of being something unique. So you know what they did with 007 Legends? They made it even more of a Call of Duty ripoff. They doubled down to the point that they were not only using the Modern Warfare 2 engine, but they were also just copy-pasting a bunch of gun models and UI elements from Modern Warfare 2 over into Legends. This was the last big-budget James Bond game to ever be released, because after it was ripped apart by critics and gamers, Activision ditched the license, rightfully so, and nobody has picked it up ever since. I mean, how do you take a character as legendary and awesome as James Bond, and you screw it up that badly? At number 9, who remembers Haze? I've got an idea. Let's try to make a Halo killer. You remember that? But also base one of the core mechanics of our game around constantly messing with the player's vision and making it extremely difficult to follow what's going on. That's a good idea. Let's do it. Green light all the way through. Give me the budget. What if we added a whole bunch of terrible lore and lackluster game design on top of that? Superb. It's not a great idea. Haze sucks. Moving on. At number 8, Battlefield 2042. As a longtime casual Battlefield fan and fan of the franchise, this one stung. If you boot up BF 2042 today, you can have a pretty good time with it. But this game had a very, very rough start. Almost killed the franchise, like nail in the coffin. When BF 2042 launched, it was not only riddled with bugs and performance issues, but it was also jam-packed with decisions, just bad decisions, gameplay changes that nobody asked for. Also, why was this game full price? Why are you charging consumers full price when it comes out? Didn't have a single-player campaign, didn't have any substantial PvE content, so why was it $60 or more for a broken, incomplete, and unpolished multiplayer experience? Again, this game has been revived pretty well. That's what usually happens now, but for the first year or so, it was painful to watch. I think all the problems with it were super dumb, so it's at number 8 today. At number 7, Land of the Dead: Road to Fiddler's Green. Now, Land of the Dead is one of the best zombie movies of the early 2000s, but the tie-in game Road to Fiddler's Green, it's one of the strangest FPS games ever made because it's genuinely kind of hard to tell what exactly it's supposed to be. The game honestly feels unfinished, like nobody working on it actually knew what it was supposed to look like when they were done, and how do you make a game based on Land of the Dead and it be that boring? The developers of this game is a studio called Brainbox Games, who they don't even have a Wikipedia page because nobody knows anything about them or has bothered to document their history, so I think I should tell everything you need to know about this, and I just kind of wonder if it was like one of those situations where it was a couple guys in their garage and they just made a game and it ended up being Land of the Dead: Road to Fiddler's Green. I don't know. I'm sure there's a cool movie that could be made off the story of it, but nobody really cares. At number 6, Greg Hastings Paintball 2. I'm willing to bet money at least a couple of you actually had this game because it was a multiplayer FPS that didn't have any blood or gore in it, which meant your parents probably let you play it. Honestly, I think that's probably the only reason the game exists. The publisher just wanted a family-friendly alternative to games like Halo 3 and Black Ops, so they tried to make a game that played like Call of Duty, but you had paintball weapons and environments instead of actual guns. I mean, it could have worked, but the graphics were terrible. It was full of bugs, and the whole thing just felt cheap and rushed out the door to capitalize on the popularity of other multiplayer FPS games. Nobody's ever done that before. I'm sure some of you had fun with it, but come on. The game was dumb. And now that I'm thinking about it, which Call of Duty gave us paintball mode? I can't remember. I'm literally drawing a blank right now. At number 5, we have arrived at the top 5, my friends. And at number 5 is the History Channel. You heard me right. The History Channel makes games. Battle for the Pacific. If your game has the History Channel in the title, it should have been canceled before it came out. This game was released in late 2007, just weeks away from COD 4, which that has to be some of the roughest timing you put on your calendar schedule ever. But it's not like the game was going to be successful without Call of Duty stealing the spotlight, because it's one of the worst FPS games ever made. That's hard to do. Battle for the Pacific is a World War II shooter. You guessed it, meant to be this super immersive and teach us something about real-world history, but in reality, whew, buggy, unfinished, shallow. You could finish it in less than 2 hours. The fact that Activision thought releasing this game at all was worth their time is kind of mind-blowing to me. I'm honestly kind of glad we're out of the era of egregious licensed games like this one because it was really bad. At number 4, who remembers Rogue Warrior? It's gone down in gaming history as one of the, if not the worst first-person shooter of all time, but honestly, I think the concept alone should have been a red flag. It's a first-person stealth shooter with a big-name actor in the lead role, and the whole thing is supposed to be based on an actual Navy SEAL who wrote an autobiography about the missions he went on, but the game, it doesn't actually use those stories. Instead, makes up a bunch of its own and turns this real-world American hero into a cliché action movie character with terrible gameplay and some of the worst dialogue you'll ever get. It's dumb. Bethesda should have scrapped this one before it got to full development, and this is, yeah, it's a Bethesda game, by the way. And I know there's a little cult following because it's so bad it's good. I get it, but it was dumb. At number 3, Call of Juarez: The Cartel. Now, the Call of Juarez series is one that I would love to see make a comeback because we don't have nearly enough Wild West games on the market, and the last one we got is arguably one of the best games ever made, Red Dead Redemption 2, let alone Wild West FPS games. But the franchise was killed by Call of Juarez: The Cartel. Launched in 2011, thought it would be an awesome idea to ditch the Wild West setting and set the game in modern-day America with a story about Mexican drug cartels in Southern California. I'm not saying the concept couldn't have worked, but in order for it to be good, the gameplay and writing needed to be top-notch. But instead, it wasn't. It was the opposite. It was terrible. The writing was horrible, and the game was full of technical oversights. You sacrificed your awesome Wild West FPS franchise for this. To me, that's dumb. At number 2, Extreme Paint Brawl. Woo, that's a clever one, often called one of the worst games of all time as well. Launched in 1998, tried to get some easy business for being a non-violent FPS game during the height of games like Quake and Unreal Tournament. We saw this roadmap before, right? Decent idea. But the game itself was terrible in every possible way. It felt like it was developed in 3 days with a budget of $42.77. Exactly, that much. The graphics, terrible. Barely any content. The artificial intelligence is some of the worst we've ever gotten. There was even a practice mode that didn't actually have any practicing in it. Now, I can see the appeal of making a family-friendly FPS game during the popularity of ultraviolet ones in the late 90s, but you had to put more effort into your project. You really, really did. And today, at number 1, the dumbest FPS game of all time, in my opinion, is Metroid Prime Federation Force. Now, Metroid Prime is one of the most influential FPS franchises of all time, with the first 2 games still being some of the best titles in Nintendo's entire library. We've been waiting almost 20 years for Metroid Prime 4, but back in 2016, Nintendo tried to hold us over with a spin-off called Metroid Prime Federation Force, and you know what? It's one of the worst games I've ever played. Where do you even start? 3DS first-person shooter that turned Metroid Prime into a crappy co-op shooter with horrible level design, awful controls, muddy graphics, literally none of the things that made Metroid Prime series good in the first place. The fact that this is the last Metroid Prime game hanging over our heads right now is painful. Hopefully, Metroid Prime 4 is actually going to come out at some point in the near future because the Metroid community is in pain and they deserve to be made whole again. Now, we went through 20 of the dumbest FPS games. You give me 2 that were so dumb that they should have made the list. We just happened to miss them or we didn't have enough room. I hope you guys have a great day, and if you're enjoying the FPS content, let me know.